What the reality of the opposition position has been exposed. The cat's out of the bag, Mr. Speaker, because it was his shadow education secretary who said of the present crisis, she said, "Don't let a good crisis go to waste." That's the real approach of the Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, seeking to create political opportunity out of a crisis, out of the difficulties and dangers this country is going through, whilst we are taking the tough decisions. The tough decisions to get this virus down, Mr. Speaker, to keep our education system going and to keep our economy moving. He supported it yesterday. I hope he will, in a spirit of togetherness and unity, that he will continue to give it his support.
Bradley.
3 months ago today, the Prime Minister said, "Test and trace can be a real game changer for us." He was backed up by the Health Secretary, who said, "Finding where people who test positive are is the single most important thing that we can do to stop the spread of the virus." Yesterday, the Prime Minister said the complete opposite. Standing there, he said testing and tracing has very little or nothing to do with the spread or transmission of the disease. Both positions cannot be right. Which one is it, Prime Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is an obvious fact of biology and epidemiology that, alas, this disease is transmitted by human contact or aerosol contact, but it is one of the great advantages of NHS test and trace, which we did not have working, alas, earlier in the pandemic. We simply didn't have it in the spring, and it is the result is that we now have the ability to see in granular detail where the epidemic is breaking out, exactly which groups are being infected. That's why we've been able to deliver the local lockdowns, and that's why we're able to tell now at this stage that it is necessary to take the decisive action that we are, and which I think he supports.
So why yesterday did the Prime Minister say that testing and tracing had very little or nothing to do with the spread or transmission of the disease?
Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to reprove the right honourable gentleman for a flaw he seems sometimes to fall into is not listening to my previous answer, Mr. Speaker. I gave a very clear answer. The answer is it is simply, and sadly, it is an epidemiological fact that transmission of the virus takes place by a human contact from person to person. What test and trace enables us to do is to isolate the cases of the virus with ever greater detail, which we weren't able to do before, Mr. Speaker.
I listened to the answer that the Prime Minister gave to the questions. That's why I asked him the question, because yesterday he said the complete opposite of what he said today. Everybody who was in the chamber, everybody who reads Hansard will see it.
Mr. Speaker, the first steps to any recovery is admitting that there is a problem. Even the Governor of the Bank of England is telling the Prime Minister to stop and rethink. The solution for millions of people right now is an extension, Prime Minister, of the furlough scheme beyond October. The alternative is putting 61,000 jobs in Scotland at risk. Yesterday, the only reassurance the Prime Minister gave those Scottish workers was saying that he would throw his arms around them. Prime Minister, I can tell you the last thing those 61,000 Scots are looking for is a hug from you. They need the security of knowing that they can hold on to their jobs and incomes for themselves and their families. Time is running out. Workers are facing the dole today. Will the Government instruct the Chancellor to extend the furlough scheme and stop 1 million workers being sold onto the scrap heap by this Government?
Prime Minister.
What I can certainly tell him is that, of course, the furlough scheme has already been extended until the end of October. People should be no doubt about that. And as I've said before, we will continue to provide the best support we can possibly give to keep people, get people, and new jobs are being created, Mr. Speaker, get people into work whilst suppressing the virus. And I know that he may not know, I can imagine that he doesn't want a hug from me, but that was a metaphor, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps it's physically incarnated by the £12.7 billion of Barnett consequentials that we're seeing come from the UK Exchequer to support people across the whole of our country.
I suspect you might get a hug now from Andrew Bowen.
Oh, well, I could possibly, Mr. Speaker, not in present company.